by a couple more devs. So first of all, do you want to introduce yourselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about your game?
Yeah, so I'm Amelie. I was an environment artist on this game, Critical Exposure. Yeah.
I'm Joseph. I was primarily a programmer on Critical Exposure, but I also went ahead and did things like the user interface and audio design.
Excellent, yeah. So if you want, you can kind of get started.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what is Critical Exposure to start us off, so we have some of the context?
Yeah, so Critical Exposure is like kind of a survival horror-esque kind of game that focuses a lot on like exploration.
Mm-hmm.
So you're playing the role of a character called Nathan, and Nathan is this like kind of amateur like journalism photographer, and you have been invited to explore like an abandoned nuclear facility with a group of other friends, and basically your objective is to explore the facility, find ways to get deeper into the facility, and hopefully find and meet up with your friends.
Cool. And so what would you say were some of like kind of core inspirations for this? What were the kind of things that inspired you to work on this type of project?
I would say games like Outlast and Fatal Frame are definitely big inspirations for us when making this game. We wanted to kind of look at what other people were doing with like how they were presenting the atmosphere of these kind of genres of games and how we might want to achieve that with our own work.
Yeah. No, really, really cool. In terms of kind of the whole development process, which I know I'm sure was all wonderful and there were never any issues ever, as it always is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if there was one kind of key highlighting moment that you're like, this is definitely my favorite part, this is the best bit, what for you, I mean, for each of you, would you say was the kind of highlight for you of the project?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say in particular, there's a very specific puzzle in this game that took us a while to kind of finalize. And when we kind of finalized it, we kind of realized just how much it kind of tied together a lot of the core features of the game. And it was at that moment where like I looked at all the features of our game and I was like, yes, this is actually going to work together, and this is going to actually form something that can be really interesting and unique.
Yeah, because we had that like brainstorm session that time, I remember, when we were in the Games Academy warehouse, and we were trying to figure out a way to like tie together the camera mechanic and then like a way to progress through the level, and then we came up with the idea of a facial recognition lock, and it was perfect because it, like you said, tied everything together perfectly. Because I remember that and being like, yes, we found a way to make everything link.
No, excellent. You know, it's always nice when you have those kind of now it clicks and everything kind of comes together. Because definitely I think there are points, like with any kind of project, where either it, for some project, like it clicks immediately and you're like, cool, we're running with it. And sometimes like, oh, I really hope it clicks before we finish the project. So it's really good to see that you kind of had that now it feels like it's coming together kind of moment. Obviously, I imagine, you know, working on something that's, you know, very, very kind of high detailed, quite complex in terms of, you know, puzzles and everything else, and kind of building not just very like kind of stunning, it's very beautiful environment, but also the kind of atmosphere around that. What were some of the other kind of core challenges, or what was the kind of, obviously programming you probably won't necessarily as built into the art, but you know, with the sound design and stuff, what would you say was the kind of biggest challenges that you faced when?
I'd say with like environment art and design, like cohesivity was really like, because we had 4 artists, so communication between everyone, making sure everyone was on the same page, and making sure that, you know, all the assets looked of a similar style. You know, shared Pinterest boards, constantly messaging on the Discord saying, is this the kind of thing that we want? Is this the kind of thing that we want? And just making sure that everything looks like it ties together for, you know,
and would you say, you know, if you were to go back, you know, not quite a year, but almost a year to your previous self, what would be the key piece of advice you'd say, you know, to help build that communication skill? What would you say is, you know, is there any particular thing that you found really, really worked, or things that didn't work as well, you know? Yeah,
I think just like trusting in like the team and that everyone kind of has your back, so that, you know, if you think that something you've delivered isn't, you know, 100% the best, like people give you advice on how to tweak things. Because that's what's been really good in our team as well. There's been so much feedback that's been really constructive from everyone. So it's not like, mean-hearted or anything. It's like, oh, could we like see how this looks or see how this looks?
So it's the kind of being comfortable sharing your work with your team.
Yeah. For me, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, because you mainly did sound design, right? So.
Yeah, I mainly did audio design. I post a lot about how people thought of particular sounds and whether they would sound like they would make sense in this kind of game or in this kind of environment.
Yeah. So in terms of team, obviously we've talked a lot about your team. There was more than just you two. How big was your team? Kind of what was the composition like? To put you on the spot, exact number.
We had a team of 7.
Okay.
We had 3 programmers and we had 2 environment artists, 1 character artist, and a concept artist.
Yes.
Okay. That's a pretty nice mix generally. Yeah. So I assume lack of a designer or lack of writer. How did that impact
we kind of had to share a lot of the workload of those roles between us. So for example, as I've said, I've done audio design and a couple other people like Joel, who is our other environment artist, and Levi, who is our concept artist. We also did a lot in the design side of things. In particular, like Levi took on like puzzle design and Joel took on like environment design.
Yeah.
And that definitely helped kind of share the workload so that we all
you had a kind of thing that you could work on, but also still kind of building a kind of cohesive thing. I like the metal detector going off. That's very nice. I assume that's the camera setting it off,
Yeah. It scares the hell out of people when they play it because it's quite loud.
Yeah, we thought it would be nice to just have a couple little like jumpy bits.
Jump scares, yeah.
No, I mean it fits the kind of sort of Chernobyl aesthetic of it's a bit dilapidated, but also still some loud kind of sounds and everything else. Mm-hmm. No, you've put a lot of work in, obviously. In terms of next steps for the project or where you envision this going, is this, something that you want to take forward and continue working on across summer, maybe further, or, are you kind of like, actually, we're happy with it. It's kind of, we're ready to say this is a nice portfolio piece. Now we want to get, jobs in industry. We want to do something else, or kind of, do you still love the project? Is the passion to keep going, or where are you at with it?
I feel like as of right now, we're kind of at like an in-between point where we could just keep with it as it is and be like, yeah, this is a nice like portfolio piece. Mm-hmm. But we have kind of made this in a way where this game here is basically like almost a demo of like a first level, and we do have like all the groundwork in place for if we want to expand on this and turn it into a full game. Like we've already had some of that kind of very basic planning like a while ago, like how we would envision the whole story taking place in order to inform the story for the demo. But that's entirely dependent on later on whether we actually decide if we want to continue or not.
Yeah, but it's nice that you have the option. Like I say, it still stands as a very nice kind of, portfolio piece, that it's a playable experience. It's very, it's pretty. You have some interesting puzzles and mechanics to kind of, you're leveraging the camera quite well. There it is. I was waiting for the kind of chime again. So in terms of your kind of research into, this particular game, obviously you made a conscious decision to kind of go for the sort of Outlast style, that kind of vibe. So is that the kind of target market then, really? Is you were kind of wanting to step into that sort of indie horror space? Yeah,
that's basically what we kind of decided way back in when we were pitching the project. We were looking at target audience and kind of who would actually like these kind of games, and we knew that people, when they were playing very story heavy horror games, that they would want to be able to kind of explore around for themselves and try and figure things out for themselves. And I think that definitely kind of informed like the philosophy of how we actually like communicate the features that we have to the player. We don't directly tell players how to do something. We kind of just have everything there ready for them to figure out for themselves.
No, excellent. I think it's good that you have, you've incorporated the exploration as actually a mechanic, not just, there's stuff that you can find, I guess. It's a core part of what you've made. So obviously, I assume this wasn't the first, like everyone didn't immediately go, this is what we're making. This has probably changed quite a bit from the initial kind of concepts and everything else. But were there any other kind of ideas that you had that were very different, or was it kind of, did you start here and kind of just build on it, or was it like, well, actually originally it was supposed to be a racing game, and
No, I feel like the core concept of it being critical exposure and being like an urbex survival horror, that core concept has remained throughout the entire development process. But a lot of like the smaller details, like what puzzles we're doing, for example, and how we communicate all the features to the player, and how all the features actually like connect. That was all kind of things that we kind of figured out and kind of changed as we went along. So some things did come up fairly late in development as well. But
yeah, also scope and things like that.
Yeah.
Always, I can imagine this comes up a lot. But yeah, we had all these like more ideas about how to do stuff. And in meetings, we were discussing it like, I've come up with this great idea. And then we just kind of have to go, well, do we have the
resource to do it?
Scope, yeah.
And that's always, we often think, oh, game development is the process of just making stuff. But actually, the real magic is also in the cutting of things that aren't quite with the experience, or that you can't give the proper love and attention to make as solid as the rest of the whole cohesive game. Is there any particular like feature or something that you're like, oh, I really wish we'd had time, or actually I'm so glad that we cut this thing, or is there anything that you're like, we really, for the health of the project, this was a really good call?
Sorry, I'm playing the
welcome to the tense moment.
For me personally, you probably saw just earlier then when they were taking photos and scanning them that there was a journal that they were choosing photos from.
Yeah.
Back along a while ago when we were first planning the journal, there were meant to be a few other like sections of the journal for things like if you were to take a photo of a map on the wall, it would have its own section and you'd be able to like actually be able to see where you are on the map. And there would be other kind of features for the journal, such as if you find notes, you actually get to record those notes in your journal. You get to read them wherever you are again. That I thought was going to be a really cool idea and would have actually helped the player a lot. But due to we had some disagreements as to whether we actually wanted the player to be able to like always just prefer to all the information they need on the fly, and instead just make it so that the player actually has to go back and find the things if they need it again. You
need to remember the things, and if it doesn't seem relevant now and it suddenly becomes relevant, it's like, oh well, I made perfect note of the thing.
And also scope as well. At first I thought I'd be able to do it, but then when I actually looked at how I would need to accomplish this, it ended up being something that would take up a lot of my time, when in reality other things like audio would have needed someone's attention. And,
especially when you're kind of building an atmosphere, like you can see here the kind of breath trail and stuff, things like that. It's little in terms of what the actual kind of time it spends on screen maybe, but it does such a huge amount of the lifting. Same with audio, where it's like good audio you might not always hear, but when there's no audio, you definitely hear it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
For sure.
And so in terms of kind of things that you've learned, or kind of problems that you've kind of overcome and tackled and everything, what would you say is the key kind of core thing that you've most learned from this particular project?
I would say communication has definitely been a big...
Seems to be a core theme today.
Because communication is very important, I think. Very important in terms of making sure not only do you actually communicate what you are doing with your teammates, but how you're doing it, accepting any kind of feedback from your teammates, and also making sure that you're all on like the same page in terms of what kind of ideas you're going for when you're developing the game. Because I think one key issue I think we had within our team was making sure that everyone had a common ideas to exactly how exactly we had planned this iteration of the game to go.
How stuff would manifest.
Because sometimes we'd have slightly different ideas as to how certain features were going to be made, and so other people made features kind of expecting it to be made a different way, and then they kind of clashed. We had to spend a bit of time kind of just sitting down, re-talking everything through again, and it would take up quite a bit of time.
Definitely that kind of, especially from a programming side.
Yes, absolutely.
Discussing we often say things like UML or whatever is really useful tools, but it's when you start to think about very complex systems and how they overlap.
Yes.
If you don't have those discussions, someone is going to have a headache down the road about having to have those discussions. Yeah, in terms of art, I mean, you had said before about communicating, the kind of making sure you have a cohesive style.
Yeah.
I assume that wasn't too difficult an experience. It was just about kind of tailoring things, more tweaking than it was like, oh yes, so here is my wonderful noir art, like, you know.
Yeah, it's more just like discussing it, and because there was quite a few artists, but a lot of the times when we'd send stuff, it'd just be the artists like giving each other feedback on stuff. Because I know with you programmers, sometimes you see stuff and you're just like, it looks pretty, like that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, just sending stuff, getting that feedback. Yeah, it's been really important.
Have you found that, you know, this year you've been more comfortable doing that with your team than in previous years, kind of being comfortable sharing your work or having those kind of discussions?
Yeah, so I'm like in second year and I'm a game artist. I'm not a game dev artist. So it's been my first year doing group work. So I've learned a lot the past like 2 terms about, well, communication and working in a team and how that manifests, especially like between disciplines. Because
hopefully it's been a good experience.
Yeah, it has. It's just been like, you know, a big learning curve compared to, you know, like in lessons in first year, you know, you can talk to anyone about Maya or Photoshop and I've got baking artifacts and they know what you're talking about. But you can't go to a program and go, oh, this is taking ages because the UVs are misaligned and this is wrong and this is wrong. It's just, you know, being able to say this is maybe going to take a little bit more time because I'm having problems or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's that shared rapport, I think.
Yeah.
And it's one of the nice things about working with kind of multidisciplinary teams is that whilst they might not always necessarily understand the technical terms, you know, if you go, oh, I'm retopologizing something, it's like, that is a word, yes. But once they kind of have an understanding and you can kind of say, this is what I mean. And as soon as they understand, it's like, okay, no, I can appreciate why this is going to take some time.
Yeah.
It's always that difficulty, I think, you see with a lot of teams early on when you're kind of first learning is like, oh, the programmer, they write code. It's like, well, what's that process actually look like? Not to say that everyone should go and master every skill, but it's really helpful to be able to have those kind of honest conversations. So it's good that you kind of found your feet there. Yeah, and
like understanding how everyone works within the pipeline is really important.
In terms of kind of, you know, where you think this fits in the broader scope of kind of the platform, do you think that, you know, you're happy with the work that you've done, that, you know, the stage where you're at, you're like, yeah, this really slaps. We're so happy with it. Sorry, maybe not literally slaps, but
yeah. I'm very happy with what we've made.
Yeah.
So you know, in terms of next steps, where can people find this? You know, if they were like, oh, we really want to play.
We have an itch page. If you X out of here and go to the main menu, and go to the credits page, there'll be like a QR code that you can scan. You can also just search up critical exposure on itch.io, and it should be basically the first result that shows up. It'll be basically a picture of like a CRT screen with a red doorway off to the side.
No, cool. I like that noticing, you know, the graffiti for all the different devs and seeing some of that in levels, which kind of ties in. Obviously, that's kind of a nice Easter egg, but it also fits kind of in the universe. Are there any other kind of fun little Easter eggs? I mean, I saw a couple that I immediately clocked, but are there any other kind of, what's your favorite Easter egg or favorite kind of side thing that you have in here?
I'd say I'm kind of biased because I put a picture of my mum in as the photograph for the wife. I did have to like send her a message and say, please, can I put you in my game? And she did agree.
At least you asked.
Yeah.
That the amount of times I've seen people go, oh yeah, we just included this person. It's like, do they know that they've been included? It's like, no, it's a fun surprise for them. Do ask permission first. Generally.
Yeah, and also the because I made some of the posters that are on the walls. The one that looks like a Soviet leader is like, I just keep using my family for reference pictures. There's my granddad because he's got this like massive bushy beard and big eyebrows. So I was like, can I please use you for a reference?
I'm borrowing your likeness.
Yeah, so you don't have to, you know, like reference anything. You just use your own photographs. It's a good life hack. But yeah, those are mine.
Yeah. Obviously, as an artist, I wasn't able to implement any kind of Easter eggs like that. But I would say probably one of my favorites out of the ones that I know that we implemented probably be the Sokol sphere, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So basically, we have. Sorry, the photos we have in one of the rooms is of our supervisor, Sokol.
As one of the options for kind of facial recognition.
Yeah, option for face scanning, yes. And because of the way Unreal Engine formats its materials and like shows a preview of materials for that particular image, it stretched his face out onto a sphere, which we just thought looked kind of goofy and funny. So we have this area in the ending half of the game where if you run around the ghost in a particular way, you'll be able to find this little area with just a bunch of
we love secret dev rooms.
Yeah, and we just have this ball that has that Sokol material on it with his face stretched out, just kind of spinning around.
I was gonna say, it's spinning around like just an orb in the sky. Yeah, it's great.
It was,
that sounds terrifying, honestly.
We were just messing around when we put it in. We basically did everything else. We were just finding random stuff to add in. We just thought we might as well mess around.
But it's nice to hear that even though obviously the theme of this is not a particularly jokey, lighthearted kind of experience, it's a little bit more grounded, it's a little bit more serious, it's a little bit, one might hazard to say spooky. That you're still finding areas where you can have fun, where you can have these kind of like, oh yeah, this is kind of cute, or this is novel, or this is whatever. So it's nice to see that you seem to have quite a nice little community. In terms of going into third year, are you all wanting to kind of stick together, or are you all like, no, we're all now we want to meet new people and do some new stuff? Where are you kind of sitting?
I
don't know if you already have any teams yet at the moment, do you?
I don't. I mean, I know some people in our team already had, like, from the start of second year, had, like, teams agreed for third year. So I think we're kind of splitting up. We haven't really spoken about it too much.
Yeah.
It's really heartbreaking.
I feel like a while ago we did obviously discuss the potential idea of some of us sticking together. Although since then, things have probably, like, changed. And I know, at least for myself, I've spoken with some people about potentially doing some ideas. For example, I've spoken with the person I made my first year game with, New Eden. We might be making the game together again, potentially. We're not entirely sure yet. But yeah, still very up in the air at the moment.
Yeah.
That's okay. You don't have to have decided yet. But it's kind of sad because I think clearly you've all worked quite well together. I'm sure you've had your ups and downs, and that's very normal. But you've made something that's really cool and you can be very proud of. Yeah. And it's a shame that you aren't all wanting to stick together third year and maybe even take it further. In terms of kind of questions, I think we're pretty much at the end. So really, what I'm going to do is my typical spiel at the end, which is thank you both, obviously, for being here. Is there anything you want to shamelessly plug, whether that's LinkedIn's, Twitter/X? Anything else, I don't know, War Thunder, Thorum ID or something, whatever, if you have some shameless plugging that you want to do. Obviously, there's a QR code to find it on itch and obviously critical exposure on itch, but is there anything else that you want to plug? You don't have to have anything.
Yeah, but while you're on the itch page for critical exposure, you could take a look at my itch page and maybe drop me a follow because I do have a few other games on there, including New Eden, which was a game we had at EXPO last year. And there may be more games added soon. I have some personal projects that are going to be coming along at some point soon, which will be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I would say my LinkedIn, Amelie Londrigan, and on Instagram, I'm trying to be more active, posting more art stuff. I'm starting to get into more like technical art, like shader stuff. So that's kiwi.vhs on Instagram. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much for joining me up here, and I will let you kind of get on with the rest of EXPO and enjoy the rest of your time. But it's been absolutely lovely chatting with you, and best of luck, obviously, going into third year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
awesome. Cool.